Hey, soul survivors, I am going to mesh two videos into this one. I had prepared a presentation for you guys before I went to bed and before I recorded it on the Macdonald Triad. It's also known as a triad of sociopathy, homicidal triad, and it's a theory. So it deals with serial killers. And I came across, of course, a YouTube video on Howard Stern had somebody call in who was going by the name of Clay. It was interesting how he said, "You can call me Clay." At first, he got upset that they got his name wrong, thought it was Ed. So he says, "You can call me Clay," which could be a red flag that he's not saying his correct name. Now there are times, uh, if somebody's in a superior position, that they can say, don't call me President so and so, or I might say, you don't have to call me Miss Schiller, you don't have to call me Cynthia, just call me Cindy. You can call me that. I'm giving you permission. So maybe he felt superior. I don't know, but there was this person, Russell Elwood, that was convicted of being a killer, and I'm going to link the interview with Howard Stern in my comments because it's a very interesting take on things. So let me tell you about the Macdonald Triad, and then we'll get into the Russell Elwood and why he picked prostitutes, how race plays factors sometimes, why he targeted prostitutes, things like that. So we can kind of understand because these type of people are narcissistic. And sometimes I want to make sure you guys know as much evidence, knowledge as possible to know who the people you are dealing with. So it deals with certain behaviors, three specific ones during childhood and the development of antisocial and violent tendencies later on in life. So animal cruelty. Now, Clay, as he said to be called, did say that he killed a rat. And then he didn't have a pattern of it, but this refers to the pattern of intentionally causing harm or suffering to animals. It could involve torturing animals, killing them, or displaying cruelty towards them. Bedwetting, enuresis is a common thing, and persistent bedwetting beyond the age at which it's considered developmentally normal, because there are times, it takes time to get used to not wetting the bed, but it's typically viewed as an indicator of emotional and psychological disturbances. I had a friend who, her husband, pretty clear to me that he was a narcissist, but I'm not uh, uh, qualified to diagnose, but he at least was high on the spectrum of narcissism. And their child wet her bed way into late elementary. So she's a sweetheart. She's not a serial killer. So sometimes it's not always an indicator. Fire setting. Now, this guy, Clay, he did do a lot of fire setting where they deliberately set fires, especially with the intention of causing harm for destruction. And that's that third component of this triad. It can possibly indicate a fascination with destruction or a lack of empathy, because a lot of times you are destroying this. So the Macdonald Triad was originally proposed by a psychiatrist, J.M. Macdonald, back in 1960 as a potential set of predictors for violent behavior, particularly in serial killers. And I'll talk about ones that had these predictors, and also people with antisocial personality traits. So we do need to note that the triad itself has been criticized to be oversimplified, lack of empirical support, but there are indicators. So early child behavior, such as aggression, impulsivity, and conduct problems in childhood can be indicative of later antisocial tendencies. Family environment, family dysfunction, abuse, neglect, or exposure to violence can contribute to the development of violent behavior. Brain or abnormalities or impairments in areas related to impulse control, emotional regulation, and empathy can increase the risk of violent behavior. Genetics can be associated with a predisposition of aggressive and antisocial behavior, and also substance abuse. I know Clay had said that There were times that he was drunk when he did this, but we're going to go into his motives, things like that. But associations with delinquent or antisocial peers reinforce and escalate violent behaviors. You're still in that developmental stage. Certain mental health disorders, such as conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, antisocial personality disorder, can also contribute to these tendencies. And growing up in a disadvantaged or impoverished environment can contribute to a higher risk of violent behavior due to the limited resources and opportunities. So there's Richard Kuklinski, also known as the Iceman. He was notorious contract killer and hitman who claimed to have committed numerous murders. So Kuklinski did exhibit some aspects of the Macdonald Triad. He reportedly engaged in animal cruelty as a child. He also had a troubled family environment, witnessing domestic violence between his parents. And because of this upbringing, combined with alleged genetic predisposition and his own psychological makeup, possibly contributed to this violent criminal career. You got Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer and sex offender. He showed signs of this Macdonald Triad during his childhood and reportedly exhibited cruelty to animals, which is that hallmark of this triad. But Dahmer's eventual crimes were also influenced by his troubled family dynamics, repressed homosexuality, and psychiatric disorders, including borderline personality disorder and paraphilic disorders. I'll do a video on that for you guys. Ted Bundy, one of the most infamous serial killers in history. Sorry, I'm writing something down. Okay. Did not display all three components. While he did have a criminal record as a child, he displayed some violent tendencies. So there's no definitive evidence for him of animal cruelty or persistent bedwetting. So it's not always indicative. But Bundy's case underscores the complexity of factors contributing to violent behavior, including that charming facade, manipulation skills, and sociopathic tendencies. John Wayne Gacy is a serial killer and sex offender. He exhibited bedwetting and was involved in cruelty towards animals as a child. So he had a history of childhood abuse, suffered from psychological issues, including antisocial personality disorder. And counter examples, we have to remember they don't always go on to commit crimes if they did that as a child. But Ed Gein was a grave robber, murderer, and body snatcher whose gruesome activities served as inspiration for several fictional characters in horror and literature, films, and books. So he did have a history of animal cruelty. He did not exhibit the other two components. His crimes were influenced by his mother's extreme religious views and deep-seated psychological disturbance. And the son of Sam, David Berkowitz, was a serial killer who claimed to have been influenced by a demon possessing his neighbor's dog. And while he did not display the entire Macdonald Triad during his childhood, he did set fires as a child. So his crimes were primarily driven by a combination of delusions, paranoia, and mental illness. And how do we protect ourselves? Because, you know, I believe it was 15 people were murdered by this one person. And how do we protect ourselves? You need to maintain awareness of your surroundings, trust your instincts, because he was with one prostitute, and sometimes they kind of torment their victims. So he was like, don't you think it's sometimes kind of dangerous doing what you're doing? And she just kind of laughed it off, like, you know, it's fine, you know, like she's okay being a prostitute. And he killed her. He said it pissed me off that she didn't feel threatened. And he wanted her to feel threatened. And granted, you know, he didn't escalate things until she said just that one thing. He has let other girls go. It wasn't always for sexual gratification, because he didn't always do that. He said he let them keep the money. One turned out to be transgender. It was a guy, and he put the money in the back area. And it was interesting because there was a black cop that they thought was the culprit. One lady got free. She was strangled, and she described a black male. And it's interesting because a lot of times people don't go outside their races to commit these crimes. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times it's whites on whites, blacks on blacks, Hispanic on Hispanic, and there can be the cross, but usually it was quite interesting. There only two looked white to me. It was a black and white photo, but two looked white. The others looked quite black. Um, Not like a caramel color. They look fairly dark, but sometimes it's hard to see in black and white pictures. So regardless of other person's behavior, it's always a good idea to protect personal safety, locking your doors, being cautious when interacting with strangers, and avoiding potentially dangerous situations. Education and empathy. Look out for signs of emotional distress, mental health issues, potential risk factors. Sometimes just a way, just like that one lady, one thing, boom, and it cost her her life. So this guy, the cop was exonerated because he chewed tobacco, and they somehow that got him off because the DNA wasn't conclusive. But Clay called Howard Stern, and he admitted, yeah, I want to be famous. I wanted to, but I didn't, but I wanted to leave clues. Why he didn't do it, I don't know. He wanted to have a trademark, so he wanted to dip the victim's thumb in paint, and I'm not sure if it was for a fingerprint or to write something, but he wanted to have his own trademark. He wanted to be famous because of this. And then the reason he stopped killing at the time of the interview, it was about a year since his last victim. He had his first victim at 16 years old. And, it's he said that he was bored, so he did it. Also, he doesn't know why he does it. He just does. And it still leaves him feeling empty. And sometimes he would self gratify himself afterwards. It wasn't always a sexual thing, but also there was this one time they're trying to find who this person is. And they, during the Howard Stern show, he got a lot of information out of him. And I like the way Howard handled it. I kind of think he should have brought him to the station or to the radio station and set something up, because this guy's admitting to all these murders, but he already knew this guy's not going to turn himself in. And so Howard's asking all these questions to get as much information as possible. At that time, he did not have tracking on a phone line, but the FBI did. So the FBI was able to bring it back to that Russell Elwood. They haven't connected all the victims to Russell Elwood, but during the jail prison stay, he did admit to certain things, kind of self-incriminated himself, and they want to brag. The repeat offenders, a lot of times, you could see his flat effect, like, yeah, I did it, and out of boredom. And it's interesting. I don't know why there were so many black victims. He did say it was because of the area he went to. Maybe that just happened to be predominantly more black in that area, and that's where he knew where to go. One time he went out of the area to get another victim, and so he stopped killing because his car broke down on the side of the road for a month, and then just continued not to do it. But because of that breakdown, cops were able to go through their records because they found him on the side of the road, give some excuse about changing his oil and fixing something, but there were no tools there, no evidence that he was repairing his car. And it was ironic that, or I shouldn't say ironic because it was probably planned. He was caught in his car masturbating, which was right by where two victims were found. They like to go back to the place, and there's times too where people will go to vigils of the person that they killed to see what's going on, or they will go back to the site, or they will help look for victims knowing they know where the person is, but it's to appear or to get information or to feel like they're getting away with something more. So I just found it a very interesting interview. There are predictors, and this guy Clay Russell Elwood, he had one factor of this. So tell me what you guys think. Is there something to it? Because I had to turn in a report a girl at my school. We were all sharing little things, and she had shared how she just loves going out in the back and killing different kind of animals. And these are predictors. So it's not always cut and dry like that, because sometimes people just do what they do and they're not going to turn into serial killers. But childhood, you can tell a lot from somebody's childhood. And some people overcome it. Some people have strength. A lot of times you need at least one person to help you get through the hard times. So it depends if they had that one person or didn't, if they had a role model, somebody who stuck up for them, helped them see things different ways. All of us want to be loved. All of us want to be noticed. And you guys are noticed here. I would like to interact with you. Interact with each other in the comments. Help somebody, and they'll help you in the same time. That I hope this channel grows. I hope we develop some strong friendships. I know a lot of you are already really good friends because of this channel, and having somebody to listen, to validate your feelings, and sometimes speaking helps. So I'll link that in the comments and tell me what you think. Watch my video first.